Thank you, Claire. We will call the meeting for Friday, August 18th to order and ask that you please do roll call.
Thank you. So City of Auburn, Nancy Backus.
Here.
City of Kent, Dana Ralph. Absent, and she may come later.
I think Marina may be coming for her today. I spoke with Mayor Ralph earlier today and she's unavailable.
Oh, okay, Marina. All right. Can we count you as the official alternate?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, thank you. City of Burien, Colleen Branch Schluter.
Here.
Thank you. City of Covington, Christina Soltis.
I'm here.
Thank you. City of Des Moines, Tracy Buxton.
Here. City
of Federal Way. Normally we have Brian Davis here, but I know we have our alternate Sarah. Yeah, Sarah, tell me your last name. Bridgeford. I always want to say a different last name. My apologies. Thank you. City of Maple Valley, Sean Kelly. Absent. City of Normandy Park, Eric Zimmerman.
I've not heard that he won't be here, but I'll ping him.
Okay, thank you. City of Renton, Ryan McGirvin.
I am here.
Thank you. City of Tukwila, Cynthia Delastrinos Johnson.
Here.
Thank you. And King County, Sonari Marshall typically joins us, and I know we were going to try and have Kristen Pula serve as alternate, but I don't see her here, so she may come later. Thank you, Mayor. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Claire. And we do have one of our advisory board members in attendance today, and that's Meiju Kurishi. Meiju, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Meiju Qureshi. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with the Multi-Service Center in Federal Way, and it's great to see you all.
Thank you, Meiju. Welcome. We're happy to have you with us. All right, we'll move into public comment. This is the time on the agenda for the public comment. If you would like to make comments, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. You will have 3 minutes to make your remarks. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. Is there anyone that has asked or requested public comment today, Claire?
There has not been, and I don't see any hands raised.
All right. Since there are no hands raised, we will call public comment closed. And then we will move on to the approval of the July 21st, 2023 minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. We have dueling motions to approve and dueling seconds. That is awesome. Are there any questions, comments, revisions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of the approval of the July 21st, 2023 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Motion carries. The minutes have been approved. All right, moving on to item 4. We have some great information today. First is the Affordable Home Ownership and Community Land Trust. And so today is an opportunity to hear from Homestead Community Land Trust and the very unique affordable home ownership opportunities they support in our region. Homestead Community Land Trust seeks to create stability, equity, and opportunity by developing land and housing in trust. This gives lower income households the opportunity to own a home that is affordable to them and remains affordable to future owners. I know some of us have heard this before, but it is always wonderful to hear it again and to get a refresher and to maybe peek our own ways of creativity on how this could happen in our own communities. Claire, I'll turn it over to you to introduce Kathleen.
Thank you, Chair. So the Executive Board has identified developing sub-regional affordable housing preservation strategies as a top priority on this year's SKIP work plan and also next year's. If you recall, we had a lengthy discussion about the importance of this topic for next year as well. So the intent of inviting our speaker today is to begin the conversation on some of the work already taking place in our region to preserve affordable housing. And one of the ways to do that is through affordable home ownership and community land trusts that maintain affordability in perpetuity. So I'm excited today to be able to welcome our speaker, Kathleen Hosfeld. Kathleen serves as the CEO and Executive Director of Homestead Community Land Trust and has been with Homestead since 2014, leading initiatives to grow the number of permanently affordable homes for ownership in our region through community partnerships. Under her leadership, Homestead has increased homes in trust by 30% and has built a pipeline for housing development of over 200 homes. She leads efforts to deepen partnerships for equitable development in neighborhoods at high risk of displacement from rapid growth and gentrification. And Kathleen serves as the chair of the Housing Development Consortium's Home Ownership Affinity Group. So I can't think of a better person to kind of start us off in this conversation on housing preservation than Kathleen. And so with that, welcome Kathleen, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm going to, I've got my PowerPoint. Can everybody see it? One of my favorite moves is I launch into a conversation and then 5 minutes later, somebody says, you know, we can't really actually see your slides. So maybe you want to share. So thumbs up. You can all see my slides.
Looks
Yes,
good.
you can see it.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, a little bit different format. Some of this information will be a repeat of other presentations I've given, but thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you so much for the focus on homeownership in South King County. This is an area that's a focus for me personally in my advocacy work because South King County cities lack many of the resources that some of our other areas like East Side and Seattle have to accomplish homeownership projects. So you're all very much in my heart and my work plan to support getting those resources for cities in South King County. South King County is where the people are, to quote a Disney song. Essentially, a lot of the folks that have been displaced from Seattle and Bellevue and the East Side have all moved to South King County cities because that's where there's more affordable housing. But the irony is that the resources are not available necessarily to build ownership opportunities for them. So that's what we want to work on. So I'll start off just with a little bit about why homeownership is important. And I always get in a little bit of trouble with my rental colleagues when I lift up homeownership as having some distinct benefits from rental housing, but I'm just going to plow right into that territory and y'all can let me know if you have concerns about that. But essentially, home ownership is distinguished from other forms of affordable housing in a variety of ways. One is the stability it offers. When you buy a mortgage, a home with a mortgage, you get to stay in that home as long as you choose to live there. You don't have to worry about your contract coming up and having to go chase a lower housing payment in some other neighborhood or some other city. Owning a home in a neighborhood enables people to put down roots in a way that they can't when they know they might have to move every couple of years or sooner. Living in an owned home creates economic mobility not only for the owners of the home, but research also shows that it creates economic mobility for children as well. So it's what we call a two-generation solution to economic mobility. And you can imagine why economic mobility might be an outcome of living in an owned home when you know that the stability, long-term relationships, There are health outcomes, there are educational outcomes that come from living in an owned home. Building assets for intergenerational wealth, or assets that can be used to further your own career education through getting a second degree. Homeownership does that far better than rent, where you just have a pile of rent receipts at the end of the year. And inclusion, affordable homeownership in particular is an answer to our regional history of redlining and housing discrimination through restrictive covenants. So for all these reasons, homeownership is an important tool in the affordable housing quiver. And many of you have seen this before. This is a chart that King County put together in 2017 when it embarked on an educational campaign to help council members understand the landscape of affordable housing a little better. And you can see that the affordable housing categories are the first categories on the left-hand side of this chart. And you have your 0 to 30% area median income category, which is generally speaking your shelter and very high service oriented rental. The next category up is your 30 to 50% area median income rental, also subsidized by government, but generally the higher the income level, the less services, wraparound services are needed. It's when you get to that 50% AMI to 80% AMI level where affordable homeownership becomes an important and valuable tool to creating affordable housing. And generally speaking, I think all affordable housing developers that work in the homeownership space would like to be serving 50% area median and below, or for 50 to 60% area median income. Unfortunately, the subsidy environment doesn't allow us to price our homes that low. We just can't. The things cost what they cost, and the subsidies that are available are limited. So we price as low as we can with available subsidy, but generally speaking, we are pricing our homes between 60 and 80. So it's usually above 60% AMI. But many folks don't think of affordable home ownership as a form of affordable housing, but we call this the 3 legs of the stool, and we encourage cities to have policy that includes affordable home ownership up to 80% of area median income. In some of the rural areas, there's a push for home ownership to go all the way up to 100% of area median income. I don't think that that's necessarily a policy priority in South King County, but just to be aware that that's a factor in some of the more rural areas. Home ownership is also a cost-effective form of affordable housing for policymakers that want to make affordable housing available. One of the things that's important about it is that 50% of the cost comes from homeowners themselves. So you are seeing the homeowner's mortgage pay half of the cost of developing homes for affordable homeownership programs. The cost per person housed is generally much lower than in rental housing. It can be as much as 1/3 of the cost per person housed. So it's very cost effective in that regard. When we add supply of affordable home ownership into the community and allow people to move up into ownership, that opens up some of that affordable rental space. People occupying rental homes who have the income to afford affordable home ownership, we call that down renting. But when you open up the space for people to move up and out of subsidized rental, you find that the existing investment in rental housing serves more people. And the community land trust model is the origin of this term permanently affordable homeownership. And when you invest in that form of homeownership, we call it we oversimplify a little bit. We call it a one and done model, where that initial investment comes in on the first sale of the home, and you don't have to recapitalize these homes 30 or 50 years down the road. That investment stays in the home at that address and keeps that home affordable resale after resale. We estimate that we serve at least 7 households over a 50-year period at the same property address. So each home creates at least 7 first-time home buying opportunities over that first year's life. So Homestead has been around since 1992, and we have 245 homes in trust. We've created 312 ownership opportunities through resales of our homes. We serve people who make less than 80% of area median income exclusively. We have a very low rate of foreclosure. We've only ever had 2 households go into foreclosure over the course of our whole program. That's because we very actively steward our homeowners and make sure that they are supported and have the resources that they need to stay in their homes. We have seen an uptick in people at risk of foreclosure coming out of the COVID epidemic. We've had about 4 households that we've been working with directly, and we're happy to say that they are all getting back on their feet, getting access to the resources that they need. About 60% of the people that are the head of household in our homes are people of color. So we are doing a lot to increase the home ownership rate of BIPOC people in King County. Compares to about 26% in the general population in King County. So the community land trust model is distinctive in the sense that we are very accountable to the communities where we have homes. That one-time investment that I mentioned, not having to recapitalize our homes. There's equitable governance of our nonprofit. We have the homeowners in our program are voting members of our nonprofit. They elect our board, they elect the officers of the board. And community land trust homeownership is one of the better celebrated tools for preventing displacement of lower income people as neighborhoods gentrify. Our civil rights era roots, the community land trust model was created in the 1960s and early 70s by civil rights era leaders in Albany, Georgia. I love to talk about this because I love to talk about the genius of this model. This model got its start when the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee enrolled people in Albany, Georgia to vote. Many of them were Black. When they did so, landowners threw folks off the land, Black sharecroppers off the land, meaning they didn't have a place to live and they didn't have a way to make a living. They didn't have farmland to farm. So, many people were displaced for discriminatory reasons. So the Representative John Lewis, Charles and Shirley Sherrod, other civil rights era leaders that were active in Albany at the time had been researching models of collective ownership of land and opportunities to create ownership opportunities for of farms, homes, and businesses for Black people. This was the triggering event that led them to coalesce around the community land trust model. And it involves collective ownership of land and individual ownership of assets on the land. This model was picked up and taken into urban environments, including Cincinnati and Boston, relatively quickly after it was established in rural Georgia. And what they found was that displacement was occurring in those places for many of the same reasons that we see it happening in our communities, which is that there's a limited amount of land. The value of that land is escalating beyond the income levels and income growth of everyday people. And so they found that the resale restrictions that cap appreciation of homes helped to keep those homes affordable in those urban environments. So I love this. I just point to this as a great model. I try to imagine people in this day and age coming up with a model like this that can transcend decades and different settings the way the Community Land Trust model does. And I just think it's an amazing tool that served people in rural areas, served people in urban areas back then and now, and continues to be flexible and adaptable to the situations that we find ourselves in today. I think some of you have seen this slide before. This is just the increase of home prices in King County between 2014 and 2021. And I leave it here at 2021 because, as you know, we kind of went up in 2022, but now we've dropped back down to about 2021 levels in terms of our median home prices. What you notice is that the median home price is far above, has been far above, and continues to be even further above what median households can pay. So even with the drop in prices that we've seen in this market, the median household in King County cannot afford the median home. Even more so, the folks who are below 80% of area median income. The problem of the gap between what's available and what's affordable has only gotten worse over time, and will only continue to get worse after our after we continue to recover from the current period we're in. So the Community Land Trust model seeks to put homeownership within reach of folks by subsidizing the price of our homes to a level of between $240 some $1,000 and $330,000. You will see outliers, some lower, some higher than that, but this is the our target pricing. And we do that because we are a housing developer ourselves and build new construction. And we can do rehab of existing homes when we get them for the right price point. But we go out and we get the public subsidy to reduce the price of those homes down to what's affordable, those levels that I just pointed to. At the first sale, the title of the land is separated from the title of the home, and the land is owned collectively through Homestead. Then the individual gets a regular 30-year fixed rate mortgage from one of our participating lenders. We don't do any mortgage lending ourselves. And people lease the land while they own the home for a small monthly fee. We secure agreements with our homeowners to maintain the home in good repair, use it as their primary residence, pay their insurance, pay their taxes. And in exchange for getting this far below market price of their home, they agree to pay that price forward by restricting their equity gain to a formula. That formula allows them to build wealth. It would not be a good use of our time to do this model if people were not taking a home equity at the end of their tenure in their Community Land Trust home. But they don't gain so much in appreciation that the home becomes unaffordable to the next income qualified family. So the folks that we serve are generally first-time home buyers. And as with everything in affordable housing, there's a technical definition of that is a little more nuanced than just never having owned a home. If you were a homeowner, but it's been 3 years since you owned a home, the technical clock resets and you get to be considered a first-time home buyer again. There are also exceptions to that rule for displaced homemakers and people who are fleeing domestic violence. So there are ways that we can allow people to purchase or be defined as a first-time home buyer or qualify, even if they have been an owner on title of a home recently. They must make less than 80% of area median income. They have to be able to qualify for a 30-year mortgage through a traditional lender. We also allow ITIN mortgages. Those are for folks that don't have a social security card or number. We also allow halal financing. That's a Sharia compliant form of financing that is interest rate free. So we want to be as inclusive as possible in the forms of financing available on our homes. Our homeowners don't have to put up 10 or 20% down payment. They only have to put up 1%. And part of the reason that they can do that is that the home value itself, from the bank's perspective, is way more than what our homeowners are paying in their mortgage. So the loan to value ratio on those homes is such that that big down payment is not required. We do also, because our homes vary in price across our trusts, the homes that come up for resale, we say, generally speaking, you should have an income of over $50,000 before you consider buying a home. The exception to that is maybe you did inherit a little bit of money from someone and you have more than the normal down payment than somebody in our program. That can make somebody able to buy a home through our program. So we always tell folks, just check in with us and tell us what your situation is before you rule this out. And each home will have minimum income qualifications as well. For example, if a home is priced $330,000, you might need a minimum income that's a little higher than $50,000. So we don't want to waste folks' time applying for a home that they're not going to be able to get a mortgage for. So we always give as much information ahead of time as possible so that they can determine if that home is if they want to go through the process of applying for it. And I should say here, we have a waiting list at Homestead of over 2,500 households. That's, I think the first time I gave a skip presentation was 3 years ago or so, and we were at something like 1,800, and it's just continued to go up. But one of the things that we do is that we give people that shopping experience. We tell them when we have a home available, and we give them the choice to say, is that in the neighborhood I want? Is it the kind of home I want? So we try to make this as normal a process for them as possible of giving them the choice of which home they want to apply to purchase. The income limits just went up in April. They're by household size. So if you're a household of one, you can't have more income than $70,000, $650 a year. It goes all the way up to 8-person households, making about $133,000. You know, I'm old enough that I think of $70,000 as a good income, and I think a lot of people do, and it is a good salary for one person. The problem is that our housing prices are so mismatched with incomes that it just puts the whole cost of the home out of reach. I wanted to talk a little bit about down payment assistance compared to creating subsidized price homes, and talk about why. So when folks talk about affordable homeownership programs, they often use a catch-all term for subsidy of talking about down payment assistance, when actually there's different ways to structure subsidy to achieve different outcomes. Down payment assistance is typically a loan to the buyer that closes the gap between what's affordable and what's available. So if you were to have one form of down payment assistance on a home today, you might be looking at trying to fill a gap of almost $300,000 or $400,000 between what's affordable and what's available on the market. Usually that down payment assistance has no payments due during the tenure of the home that gets paid back when you sell the home, and it's repaid with interest. That is a great model when you think that the affordability crisis is one generation to solve. But for us, the problem with down payment assistance is that home goes back out on the market at the end of that sale and becomes even more unaffordable because home prices are always going up. So that's why permanent affordability is an important tool in policymakers' toolkit to keep homes affordable. And in this case, the subsidy is to the community land trust, and it's tied to the property address, and it reduces the price of the home itself down to what is affordable. So it goes, the home buyer doesn't have that as debt on title. They don't have to repay it when they resell, but they do get that much, much lower home price when they buy. Some Habitat for Humanity affiliates are picking up on this because it is a very efficient, cost-effective way to create first-time home buying opportunities for folks. So the main difference between a community land trust and a Habitat affiliate is the governance structure of we allow our homeowner members to be members of our nonprofit and help us to govern the organization. So before I move off the down payment assistance topic, I will just show you this, which some of you have seen before, but it's just a reminder that there was a time when home prices and incomes were close to each other and down payment assistance could work. So back in the mid-90s, not only were home prices more affordable, they were actually less, than the median income. So it was a good time to buy. Home prices were still out of reach for the folks we serve, but you could help them with that down payment assistance. And we saw, the need for down payment assistance go from like $25,000 per home all the way up to about $100,000 per home. And Homestead was putting together, 2 and 3 and 4 forms of down payment assistance to get people into our homes. But then you see the run up to the first housing bubble and the way that home prices outstripped even median incomes. We had the recession, home prices touched again briefly, and they've taken off again. And the trend line is going up. So this is where you see the gap between home prices and what's affordable, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, depending on which market you're in. And that's why new construction and subsidizing the price of homes becomes a more cost-effective way to get people into affordable home ownership. So just to talk a little bit about how people make money on their home price. So I've got a little typo in here. I gotta fix that. It is something like 230. There we go. I may not have completely fixed it. Essentially, let's say you have a $200,000 home, you own it for 10 years. You are making, the home is appreciating at 1.5% compounded annually. The resale price, that's right, it goes to 230, 108. Correcting this on the fly. The appreciation, the amount of equity that you get in the home isn't limited to just the amount of the home appreciation. It includes the pay down of your loan principal. So most of our homeowners owning a home at this level would have paid down about $34,000 of their loan value over that 10-year period of time. So they're going to take home about $67,000 of equity. That's on a $200,000 home. And we've just used $200,000 because it's easier to do the math. Obviously, our homes are, some of them start out at a higher level. And so you're going to be getting more equity over the time period that you own the home. Most of our folks who own a home through our program do sell and buy a market rate home. And they do find that the equity that they've built up in their homestead home is sufficient down payment for a market rate home. Many of our folks also stay in their home and want to stay in their home for their whole lives. And it becomes a great tool for them to have a very low home payment that in many cases they do pay it off as they approach their retirement years. And then they have a fully paid off home that with no housing payment other than their insurance and property taxes. So it becomes a great way to own a home throughout your life cycle, especially if you started as a young person. Some of our projects that I'll share with you, we had the Village Gardens homes in the Central District. We completed the sales on these in 2022. Most of the homes were sold in 2021. Here are some pictures of the insides of these homes. You can see that these are really high quality residences. We use very high quality and environmentally sustainable materials. The homes are heated and cooled with mini split systems. We use heat pump water heaters to conserve energy, all Energy Star appliances, and lots of building materials that are low VOC so that the homes are very healthy. The air quality in the homes is very healthy. We like to prioritize, 2, 3, 4 bedroom homes because we're trying to serve households that are larger families. Currently, we are building the Southern in Tukwila. Hello, Tukwila. Thank you for your partnership. This is a net zero development, which is a very special environmental standard. These homes are designed to produce more energy than the residents use. It's located at the corner of 140th and Military Road on land we purchased from the Riverton Park United Methodist Church. It's within view of the Cascade View Elementary School. It's a really great location for young families. So these homes not only have solar panels to generate electricity, but they're built to a very high energy conservation standard, very thick walls, lots of insulation, special types of ventilation and energy recovery ventilation systems. These are 3 and 4 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, 2-story cottage duplexes. And one of the reasons that we invest in the net zero energy for these homes is not only is it good for our climate and good for the environment, but it also lowers the total cost of home ownership for our homeowners through their energy savings. And we do find that if you can reduce $100 of expense from the management of and ownership of a home on a monthly basis, that just generates more equity and savings for our homeowners over the long term. And that is one of the goals of homeownership, is we do want people to build equity, build those intergenerational assets going forward. We can, I can go into this in more detail if it's of interest, but these are some of the features that make a home net zero energy, air filtration and ventilation, much thicker roof insulation, the solar panels, as I said, high performance windows. That's where a lot of heat and cool air is lost. And so we've got 3-pane windows that go into these homes. So this is a very special development, similar in these energy and environmental standards to the net zero homes we built in Renton. Thank you, the city of Renton. Thank you, Hannah, for your partnership. And those are being successfully used by our homeowners there. So at the Southern, just as an example, we have 3 homes that are priced for 60% AMI households and below. Those are at 275. We have 7 of the homes priced all 3-bedroom for 80% area median income below at 320. And then we have 1 4-bedroom home that's available to households below 80% area median income at 332. 5 of the homes at the Southern will be sold at market rates. Those prices haven't been set. We'll set those closer to the time of, well, we won't set those prices. We will have a real estate agent sell them with an asking price, of course, but that might go higher or lower depending on what's happening in the market. 2 of the homes at the Southern are really special homes because they're going to be owned and operated by Parkview Services as group homes for persons with disabilities. And there's as you are probably aware, there's a very limited supply of homes for adults with disabilities, and we're excited to be able to bring these special folks into the Southern's neighborhood. There's just a little site map of the project. Food security is a really important thing in Tukwila, and so in addition to the environmental standards, we have a lot of edible landscaping. This walkway where you see so many trees, that's an actual grove, an orchard grove of fruit-bearing trees that we have planned. There's also a community garden area off to the right where residents will have the opportunity to have raised beds and do their own food production if they choose. And here's Willowcrest, just a couple of pictures from that one. We built 12 net zero townhomes there. We are applying for the funding to do a phase 2 at Willowcrest and plan to replicate the environmental standards at Willowcrest 2 as well. That'll probably be at least 16 more permanently affordable homes. We may introduce the market rate element into the phase 2. We do that not for social engineering purposes, as some people do, but for we use it as a form of subsidy. Again, there is a limit to the amount of subsidy that's available for homeownership, and we use the market rate homes. We generally price them above what it costs us to build the homes, and we use the difference between what folks pay and what they cost to build to cross-subsidize the affordable units. So here's some pictures from the first phase of Willowcrest. Again, you can see very high quality. The Willowcrest had views of Mount Rainier in some of the units. We're really pleased about that. So to wrap up, Claire had asked that I update you on, the types of things that cities can do. As you're working on your comprehensive plans, we do encourage you to look to increase home ownership in your policy and to address those 3 legs of the stool, but also to address the fact that access to home ownership is a racial equity issue. Many of you do have very high levels of people of color in your communities, and we want to be able to put homeownership within reach of folks who have been historically excluded because of discrimination. We encourage you to advocate for more homeownership funding at the state level. We encourage you to continue to advocate for King County homeownership funding. We have been working with King County to try to eliminate the interest aspect of the transit-oriented development source of funding, and believe that will be something that we'll be able to do in future bond issuances. We do encourage King County to actually start tracking the production of subsidized homeownership units on its affordable housing dashboard. That would be an important measure of racial and social justice, as well as affordable housing. We encourage you to look for ways to fund homeownership projects. You are doing that through SKIP, obviously. If there are other ways that you can do fees in lieu for meeting with some of your for-profit developers. That's a good thing to consider. Working with affordable homeownership developers to identify surplus land. Many of the projects that we do are on land that's been given to us at low or no cost. And we also encourage you to have in place somebody identified in your cities when we do a project that the state and the county can contact to say, do you support this project? We want somebody to be available to take that call and say, yes, we support this project in our cities, and because that's an important criteria for state and county funding. We've talked before about lots of zoning and incentives. We do find, that cities can waive or do reduced impact fees. There's a need to really work with the utilities as well to waive impact fees and to try to incentivize affordable housing and affordable homeownership in that way as well. And then the other thing that we talk about with cities is that internal staff process around how people get land subdivided, how we work with your permitting department, and permitting a whole subdivision, not individual homes in the subdivision, having an internal person that can help bring folks together to make decisions in support of an affordable housing or homeownership project. And also addressing that, no offsite infrastructure upgrades that have really nothing to do with our projects. Most of our projects are really happy to pay for upgrades to water mains and, infrastructure in that regard. When it's going to be used by our own projects, it's harder to swallow when it's for future growth, which is likely to be a for-profit developer that perhaps is better able to absorb that cost. An additional thing here is if you have the opportunity to work with an affordable housing developer and apply for the CHIP infrastructure grants, that's a great thing to do and to offer to do that for your affordable housing partners. So we encourage you to think about that as a way to offset. A lot of the good locations for homeownership or even rental housing are sort of taken, the obvious places, and what's left are greenfield sites that don't have a lot of infrastructure. So those CHIP grants are really valuable to help take in that additional cost of those sites. If you don't have an inclusionary or density bonus program, I invite you to consider that. We did a webinar a couple of years ago with the Association of Washington Cities that talked about Renton's density bonus program. Hannah is a resource to tell you more about that. The video from that webinar is also available at the Northwest Community Land Trust Coalition website. If you need a link to that, just let me know, and you can watch that program and learn more about what they did. Finally, just encourage you to check out our closeddoorsreport.com website. There's a really great tool there where you can look up the supply of homeownership units that are affordable in your community for folks between 50 and 80% of area median income. It also has a tab where you can look up the homeownership rates by race in your area and look at those disparate impacts that might be affecting folks as part of your discernment on your comprehensive plan updates. And with that, I'll close and take questions.
Wow, Kathleen, thank you so much. What a great presentation for us. Are there questions from any of the board members? Tracy.
Thank you. I was looking for my raised hand. I always have a question, so I can always come up with something. So Kathleen, thank you. Great presentation. And I appreciate you even fielding. I think you fielded some questions for me back after the last presentation. So thank you for your time. I had a question about when you have a loan, let's say, and let's use the 10-year example, you've got a home at $200,000, and according to the equity formula, the homeowner gets a certain amount of equity. That's a controlled equity, but it is equity over a 10-year period of time. But let's say the market demanded a huge equity increase. The homeowner then upon sale gets their controlled equity. And so for the new purchaser, is there a new formula or a new base that gets established based on a market value? Is there a gap at all? So that, okay, and then, so if the trust, let's say the trust goes for 50 years, or is that how long they go? The trust in a—
We go forever.
Okay,
So-
it goes forever. So after a certain amount of time, you're going to have, let's say 30 years or 40 years down the road, you'll have, I mean, a comparative, you might have, like in today's market, a house that you could buy or sell for 50,000 when market value is at 700. For example, in this market, if you would have started this in the 1980s,
Mhm.
and a 3-bedroom, a bath and a half house with a garage, we went go for, $40,000 in my neighborhood. And now they're at, 600.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so 30 years from now, are you saying that controlled equity is still going to keep these homes at that?
Yes. Yeah, we have to, so like in the example that I gave, that $200,000 home, hypothetical home, the resale formula price, with the appreciation, it went from 200 to 230 something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then the next home buyer buys at 230, and maybe it appreciates another $40,000 over the next 10 years. So now you're up to 270. And then the third person is going to get maybe 45. So now you're up above 300, but that's over the span of 40 years. So
right. And so I guess
just went through 4 decades, right?
But the market value is going to do this.
It's going to be way up high.
Exactly. So
right.
that in 40 years, let's say I guess that's what I'm saying. So that.
But I think the thing that's important to point out, Tracy, is that incomes are not going up like that. Incomes, right. Real income is going like this. Real income is increasing at like 3% a year. So that's what's crazy about our market is market prices are going up at like 400%, but real incomes are going up about 3%. Mm-hmm. So what we're saying is we're going to keep home prices stable in alignment with real income growth, so that our lower income households can always find a home that's available to them within their income range. We don't care about what's happening in the market. We're not going to participate in the market because the market is uncoupled from what incomes are doing.
Does
that make sense?
Oh yeah, that's true. So thank you. Just for the understanding, if it were a different formula, so I had other questions depending on if it had different formulas. So you answered my question. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and just before we get off the topic, I would just want to say, this is why the value of the investment that cities make in permanent affordability increase. It's smart money. So you put $40,000 or $50,000 in a community land trust or permanently affordable home ownership home now, 10 years from now, that investment, the value of that is going to go up 400%, which means that you would have to spend 400% more 10 years from now to bring that home into trust and get that price to be what it needs to be today. So the more you can invest in these homes now, the less you're going to have to invest 10 years from now.
Thank you,
Christina?
Kathleen. Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
Christine.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. That was incredibly insightful. First off, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? Because there were a couple times where I was just like, I want this screen, or do we already have it?
It was in our packets, Christina.
Thank you.
Sometimes,
Thank you.
yeah.
I went through, I didn't check. Anyway, I didn't check since Wednesday. Secondly, the developers. That's been my question from the get-go, since when you were explaining. Where are you finding these developers? Naturally, there's so many, most developers want to capitalize on the majority of it all. Is there a special pool that you are searching from, just so we could maybe have an idea there?
Are you asking who builds our homes?
Correct?
We do.
Okay. Can
So-
you elaborate just a little?
Yeah, absolutely. We are a housing developer. And I think that the quick answer to your question is, other than nonprofit developers like ourselves and Habitat, there aren't people that are building homes at these price points. They can't. Most of the for-profit developers are trying to satisfy investors that want at least, in the teens, if not in the 20% return on their investment. That makes it virtually impossible for-profit developers to build homes at price points low enough to serve middle income people. And so this is one of the things that I've been saying about the zoning conversation. Zoning is great. We're really grateful for the gains in the legislature around zoning. It is not enough. And you will not see a massive production of homes for lower income people from zoning.
Yep.
And that was sort of oversimplified in the legislature this year.
And I mean, we're talking down from all the levels, down to the subcontractors and everything. That is yours, correct?
We do
Okay,
that.
that is-
Yeah. So we
that is amazing.
hire subcontractors. So we have a
Okay.
general contractor that we hire. We've got a pipeline. We work traditionally with one general contractor, but our pipeline is getting so big that we'll probably have more than one. We try to do priority hire. We try to do, work with contractors that are, increased BIPOC contractor
Okay.
participation and that type of thing.
It's in those details that it really makes up for that, but thank you. That makes for clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? So Kathleen, I have one in the drawing that you showed that has the common areas of land. Who's responsible for those common areas? Who takes care of the edible vegetation, like the fruit-bearing trees? Is that
Yeah.
the residents? Is that someone?
Yeah.
Okay. So-
There's a homeowners association. It works just the same way as a regular homeowners association. The interesting thing about a community land trust homeownership, though, is that although we believe all of our homeowners are perfectly capable of running their homeowners association and doing all that stuff, and they have an ownership management company usually that works with them to help them keep their compliance. That said, Homestead does keep an eye on our HOAs to make sure they are funding their reserves, that they have a good relationship with their management company, that the management company is, giving them good value for their dues every month. And so we keep our hand in and make sure that people are having a good homeowners association experience. That's really important too when we have these mixed income communities of some market rate buyers and some and then the majority are subsidized homes in the community land trust.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions for Kathleen? Kathleen, thank you. I always learn something new whenever I hear your presentation, see something that catches my eye that didn't before. I'm just so appreciative of the work that you do and that Homestead Community Land Trust does. It is definitely the way to be able to build generational wealth, and appreciate your work. I look forward to the day when Auburn is working with you on this.
And thanks to the generosity of a lovely philanthropist, we will have capacity to work with more of the cities in South King County. So we'll be reaching out to you in the coming year to see what opportunities we can cook up together.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to item number 5. Excuse me, board business. Item A is the 2023 second quarter progress report. And quarterly progress reports are required by the SKIP interlocal agreement. This is an opportunity for staff to provide progress updates to the board, and progress reports also serve as a tool for us to communicate back to our respective jurisdictions on the work that SKIP is doing. I will turn it over to Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So you should have received a copy of this progress report in your agenda packet email sent Friday, August 11th at 3:46 p.m. But it is also attached to your calendar invite for this meeting if you want to review that on your own device. And there was a question about the PowerPoint. It's also included in the calendar invite if you need that. So the 2019 interlocal agreement requires that the executive manager submit a quarterly budget performance and progress report on the status of our work program to you, the executive board, and that progress report be shared with the legislative body of each of your jurisdictions. So Q2 this year represents a time of collaboration, communication, and just overall awareness building about SKIP and the work that we do. So not only did we develop and adopt a work plan for next year in this quarter and facilitate a new revenue source for the Housing Capital Fund, I presented at many of your councils and committees and got to shine a bright light on the good work of this group, as well as answer a lot of questions from your council colleagues. So Dorsal and I met with Representative Smith and his housing policy staff to bring awareness about SKIP and the needs of South King County. And I represented SKIP and the Housing Capital Fund on a speakers panel on housing equity. So I really continue to be hopeful in this work and the progress that we're making. And I hope that you are too, even if it feels like that progress is really slow sometimes. So thank you all for hanging in there in this important work. So I'm not going to go over everything in the report, but would encourage you to take a look on your own time. I'm happy to share my screen and just go over a few things with you. So let's see. Are you able to see that? I can make it bigger.
Yes, we can see that.
Oh, it's a little smaller. All right. So my PDF is not showing pictures for some reason, but if it looks funny to you, just holler and let me know. So as I mentioned, Dorsal and I attended and presented at 5-member jurisdiction city councils or committees on the 2024 work plan and budget. And really a huge thank you to the staff work group members and everyone that assisted in getting those through the legislative process. In time for us to be able to transmit that to King County for them to be able to finalize that by the end of the year. It was a big lift for everyone, but the staff work group really did make it feel pretty easy. So much appreciation. For the advisory board, under Dorsal's leadership, we launched the recruitment effort to increase membership to fill 2 vacant seats, plus add to the overall membership with the goal of bringing the total membership to 15. So this recruitment drive continues and we are looking to fill 5 seats. So this is a request to you all right now. If you haven't done so already, I would request that if you could think of someone that you would recommend we consider for the advisory board. If you could email Dorsal and let him know the name and the contact information of that one person, that will really help us ensure that we are having a solid geographic representation in our candidate pool. And Dorsal, if you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat so everyone has that right now, that will help us. So we are really trying to formalize that outreach through early September. And so thank you, I appreciate it. On the next goal, build long-term sustainability for SKIP Housing Capital Fund. So we developed and adopted language important to the board for the Housing Capital Funds to ensure that if a project was located in a jurisdiction and that jurisdiction was not supportive of that project receiving SKIP funds, that project wouldn't move forward. So that was really important work that you all had identified as a priority. We facilitated conversations with staff from the cities that collect those House Bill 1590 funds and coordinated a quick effort to pool these funds for this year's Housing Capital Fund funding round, bringing a total of $6 million available for this year's funding round. So the board also began discussions on identifying other potential revenue sources for the Housing Capital Fund, with a lot of interest in engaging philanthropy and also engaging nonprofits and building those relationships in South King County, and also bringing awareness to our state and federal delegations in our needs. So under goal 3, work with partner jurisdictions to enhance and develop policies that protect existing affordable housing and accelerate access. So the affordable housing inventory dashboard was finalized with a lot of review and feedback provided by participating member cities and the requirements of Commerce's Housing Action Plan and Implementation Grants, and those were all successfully met. On April 26th, SKIP hosted a roundtable discussion with 11 developers. Kathleen actually participated in that as well. They shared their experiences and recommendations on how to reduce barriers to affordable housing development in South King County. And a summary of that discussion is available on our website. And I'm going to ask Dorsal now as well to post that link in the chat that's available both to the board, but also to the public as well. So for the remaining goals, SKIP participated in Affordable Housing Week and accepted a proclamation from the City of Federal Way. We represented SKIP at over 40 regional meetings, and the board heard from some of your neighboring jurisdictions about expedited permitting. Regarding the budget, that's on the second page. So this is going to look a little bit different than what you're accustomed to, but I did want to show the revenue received by category and begin to show the expenditures of the Housing Capital Fund. So let's see if we can see. So we'll get down to the expenditures in a minute. Beginning with operating revenue. So these figures should look familiar since these are your annual contributions. The Housing Capital Fund contributions are what we have invoiced for this year. And these numbers only include the first revenue source. So these exclude the House Bill 1590 funds, but those will show up likely in, quarter 4. Quarter 3 will be too soon, I think. And then the Department of Commerce grant, this is what we've invoiced the cities through the end of June. So one item that needs clarification and explanation is this line item contributions, donations, showing a negative $5,000. So this item has an origin story going back to 2018. This amount was included as a placeholder in the second year budget in the founding ILA. And so the first year's SKIP budget also included this amount to be able to accept grants from contributing organizations in the early days, even before there was SKIP staff. And since the second year budget was adopted alongside the first, the assumption at the time was made that a grant in this amount, in the amount of $5,000, might come in, but a grant wasn't pursued for that year, and the $5,000 was never received. And we've been carrying this ghost revenue since that time, essentially inflating our fund balance by $5,000. So unfortunately, we have to back it out. This is the only way to do it, to show that. And so wanted to just provide the board clarification on that dollar amount. So the interest earnings across all of our funds is almost $40,000. And this is attributable to the high interest rates happening right now, but also because of our high balance for the Housing Capital Fund as well. So this is showing up in operating. This is how we've always shown it in these reports, and wanted to bring that to your attention that we are benefiting from those high interest rates. Let's go down to expenditures. So operating expenditures total $180,000 with an estimated ending fund balance on June 30th at $416,000. There are no expenditures to report in the Housing Capital Fund, but that should change by next quarter's report. And as a side note, I just submitted our draft contract to Habitat today for their review. So that is moving forward as well. Between last year and this year's funds sourced from Substitute House Bill 1406 revenues, SKIP has pulled almost $2.5 million for affordable housing. And by next quarter, we'll see an additional $4.9 million sourced from those House Bill 1590 funds added to this balance. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Claire? Not seeing any hands. I would say that means you did a fabulous job of explaining that.
Well, thank you. And just a reminder, at the last quarterly progress report, we talked about how you would like these distributed, and the conversation with the staff work group was that we would provide it to them, and they would figure out and determine for their own jurisdictions how best to share that with the legislative body. So wanted to remind the board of that as well. Thank you.
Excellent. And not wanting to not make note of the $6 million comment that you made about the funding for this year. Huge. This board should be so proud. Never thought we would be here this quickly. So yes, awesome, and kudos to everyone involved. This is phenomenal. All right, since there are no questions, Claire did such a fabulous job. Let's move on to legislative priorities. And in previous times, we had adopted state legislative priorities, but given the diverse positions of our member jurisdictions, we didn't advocate for them this year. So last month we discussed focusing on legislative priority, increasing funding for all aspects of affordable housing development and preservation in our region. So SKIP staff has prepared a draft of a legislative flyer to be used to help raise awareness around our community's needs. That should have been in your packet too, and I will turn it over to Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So this item was sent to you on a Wednesday, August 16th at 2:29 p.m. It's also included in your calendar invite. So last month, the board discussed alternative options for engaging the state and federal delegations outside of adopting a detailed legislative agenda. There was consensus to not pursue a hefty legislative agenda, but rather to rally around one common legislative priority all member jurisdictions can agree on, the need for additional funds for all aspects of affordable housing in South King County. And that there is an opportunity for us all to amplify that call in some coordinated strategy. So Dorsal, the staff work group, and myself have been working on a one-page summary flyer that can be used by you and any other interested folks from your jurisdictions when you are meeting with state and federal delegates on other topics. So, you know, the thinking is that you're already in these meetings with the delegation. Why not add the conversation of the high need for additional funds for affordable housing and the work that you all do with SKIP to those conversations? So along with this flyer, we discussed having talking points that the board could use, and those will be forthcoming later in the fall. And I would encourage you to include, considering including this legislative priority on your own jurisdiction's legislative priorities list. So, you know, I think that those conversations are beginning to take place. And I don't know if all of your cities do adopt formal legislative priorities, but this is one way for us all to unify on this topic. So yes, being in those meetings to talk about what SKIP does and the need for additional funds for affordable housing in our subregion. But also if multiple state and federal delegates are seeing this item across, you know, the various cities' legislative agendas, that can be also incredibly powerful, and I think is an easy way for us all to really amplify and come together and address this as a coalition. So I would like to share my screen and go over the flyer with you. And really, we're looking for feedback. Does it are the data points under the representing our communities correct? Does it feel right to you? Is there something else we should be looking at? How does the text feel? Just anything in general would be great. And so let me share my screen. And I already am aware of one typo so we realized that we have left out a very important E in homelessness in the title. And so we will certainly have that fixed. But other than that, I can share my screen if you're someone that likes to really look a lot closer or in a different way, feel free to open it on your own device. But we started off with wanting to ensure that all of our member jurisdictions could be well seen at the very top. So we have you all listed there. The column on the left, the who we are and our purpose, this is our standard language that we use on the quarterly reports and other documents. So we thought we would include that. We wanted to start off by talking about our communities. So what are we talking about when we're talking about SKIP, jurisdictions, South King County? And we wanted to focus on, you know, the economic needs. We wanted to focus on the demographics, to sort of paint a picture of the need, like why we're talking about this, what our real need is. So you'll see the first item about rising housing costs and decreasing affordable supply, that we're experiencing it in ways not found elsewhere in King County. And within all of these items, we have citations at the bottom of the report. We thought that was really important to be able to cite where we're getting these things from, so that they know we're not just pulling it out of a hat or making it up. So you'll find those citations at the bottom of the page as well. The SKIP member cities are under intense pressure to support their residents' ability to remain in the community. This is one of those qualitative ones. This doesn't have a citation, but we hear that from you all. We hear that from our planners as well. And 52% of South King County residents identify as persons of color. So we get that data point from the American Community Survey, the 5-year community survey published in 2021. And then SKIP member cities' average household income is 30% lower than King County's. So this is something we did a weighted average calculation using number of households for our SKIP cities. So that clarification is in the bottom in the citation, but King County's average household income is high up there at 154,000. Life expectancy among South King County residents declined between 2011 and 2021. This was from our health report called King County Community Health Needs Assessment, 2021-2022. And from that same report, we found that in King County, infant mortality is highest in South King County, where babies are twice as likely to die before their first birthday than babies born in East King County. So this is just trying to highlight, you know, the economic difference going on between our subregions within the same county. And then we talk about the legislative priority. And this should look familiar for those who were at the meeting last month. This hasn't changed, but that first item, home ownership for moderate income households and below, kind of resonates, I think, a little bit with today's conversation from Kathleen. And preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing, land acquisition to secure permanent affordability, permanent supportive housing, infrastructure around affordable housing developments. You heard Kathleen kind of mention that a little bit about those offsite requirements, and then workforce housing as well. Happy to change any of those phrasings. If there's other items you think that needs to be included or called out, let me know. And then the remaining of the flyer is just highlighting our Housing Capital Fund. I thought it would be important to show the work that you all are doing, you know, because I think if we are asking for something from our state or federal delegation, we want to be able to show, hey, we're working hard. Look how hard we're working. Here's what we're doing. So being able to call this out, I think this is just really important work to highlight, to be able to tell our story of how we're trying to address these issues on our own, and how it's just not enough. And then our executive board and our community advisory board as well. Here just a blurb about our governance structure there. So we kept it to one page. There's a lot of text, but we printed it and we looked at it and we said, well, you know, we can make this work. So with that, happy to hear your feedback, your comments. Yes.
Any comments, Tracy?
Thank you. This looks like it represents a lot of work. So I appreciate the collaborative effort that went into this. And so I want to clarify this was, the idea was this was created in lieu of a legislative priority list and ask, correct? And so I'm thinking in my mind, the people that are going to get this are legislators in Olympia and also for Washington, D.C., our 2 senators, and then whoever represents us throughout the county, correct? So I would say this is a lot of text. And so that people will read it. I think that's important as well. They're very busy. So I'm thinking something that might be helpful would be to combine who we are and our purpose, those two sentences. There's a little bit of redundancy in there. You might put that together. And I would recommend possibly even eliminating the Housing Capital Fund, Executive Board, and Community Advisory Board paragraphs, and maybe keep some of the statistics, but highlight the legislative priorities and just reduce the text. If I were a busy legislator and I saw this on my desk, I would put it off till later and then it wouldn't come. That's what I'm thinking. So that's what I would recommend. Just reduce the text as much as you can and keep very high level bullet points on this.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Other, excuse me, other comments? Anyone else? And yes, Colleen.
Thanks, Mayor. I think it serves as a great background document, as a good reminder for all of us executive board members when we're interacting with our representatives to be able to fully embrace and understand and articulate what SKIP is. I agree, though, that if we're asking for something, that's really what the document should be, is what that ask is. So I feel like this is a great background complementary piece and helps when you have 5 minutes in front of staffers or in front of a legislator to be able to be ready to talk about what SKIP is. But again, I would echo what was just said, in that ultimately, what's our ask of people and what are the key things that we want them to know to support that ask.
Thank you, Colleen. What would you think about, I personally, I like the text that's on here. I think a one-pager is really, I'm impressed that things were whittled down to one page, perhaps bolded or different font for the legislative priorities. But for me, I do feel that it's critical that we hear about what our communities are facing, why, right? And I think these lead into, and the fact that we are doing our own work, not just looking for legislators. We're not necessarily just looking for a handout, although we always are, but that we are utilizing funding opportunities that we already have available to us, not just coming looking for more. So I like the layout myself. The only thing I do agree with, whatever we're asking for, we need to highlight. So perhaps a different font, a different color, something that will let that stand out. And if they only have a couple of minutes, then that's what they look at. If they have more time, if one of their staff has the time, they can read the rest of it. I would hate to leave our story out if someone is wanting to see more. Anybody's thoughts on that?
One counter proposal might be, because I'm hearing two sides, but we could take out the executive board and the community advisory board part and just leave in Housing Capital Fund, so they know, I guess, of that work, because the cities are already, kind of mentioned in the who we are, mentioning the cities names are at the top.
Tracy?
I think that's a great addition there, Nancy. And so if in highlighting it, maybe pick the legislative priorities and put them in a green box. Where you have purpose, I think, of course, highlighting our purpose is great, but if you keep who we are and purpose both gray, lining up with the skip there, and so that pretty much, other than the HHP in the skip, everything is navy and white, muted navy and white, and put the legislative priorities in a green box instead of purpose. That might be a way to keep the same color scheme, but highlight a different thing. Anyway.
Thank you. Christina.
Yeah, I'm really one for like an OCD, get my attention, tell me exactly what you want and don't waste my time. I actually think that if I don't think we have to change the color scheme or even stay within the color scheme. In fact, the point of highlighting something would be to take it out of what's normal and what the rest looks like. If we actually just highlighted the legislative priorities, that would be exactly where the eyes would be drawn. And everything else can stay for like when you said, Nancy, for should you want the information or have the time, maybe it was somebody else, but have the time to look at the rest of the wording, go right ahead. We have lots to share. But I mean, even making it, whether it's like truly highlighting it, like whether it's red or yellow, but really draw the attention to that.
Thank you. Other thoughts? All right. Well, Claire, a little bit of work, but truly thank you for the work that's been done on that. I do like it. It is, for me, it's pleasing to the eye, the colors, and maybe just a tad bit more work on it. We'll get it perfected. This is a great draft and definitely great bones.
Yeah, thank you. And I failed to mention, wanted to shout out Dorsal Plants for his work on this. And he worked really closely also with City of Auburn designer Kevin McCoy. So big shout out to Kevin as well for making both of them for making this look like such a professional document that we could share with you today. So thank you.
Very good. Excellent. All right. Well, if there are no other comments on that, let's move on to.
Mayor Bacchus, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
yes,
I was just gonna say it might be helpful to get like an aide from a representative's office or something, also provide feedback, because I know I used to intern at the state legislature many years ago, and I know that they're skimming through it for maybe 60 seconds, and so I think that might also just be helpful as you're working on redesigning or just updating that.
That's an excellent idea. Thank you so much. Excellent idea. All right, let's move on to the sub-regional affordable housing preservation strategies. And, we know that there's been a lot of effort put into new affordable housing projects. And many of the projects active today need preservation support to continue to serve our communities. And over the next year, we are going to focus on developing a sub-regional housing preservation strategy. I think that's critically important for us. And so SKIP staff have prepared a survey for us to help guide the start of that conversation. So again, I'll turn it over to Claire for that presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So as part of the starting place for the conversation on developing a sub-regional housing preservation strategy as included in the 2023 and 2024 SKIP work plans, both as very high priorities, I wanted to administer a survey to you. So you should have received the questions in last week's Friday agenda packet, and the virtual link was sent on Wednesday at 2:29 p.m. for those who like to get a head start. But the questions are intended to solicit your unique perspective and to also learn more about the preservation issues in your jurisdictions. So similar surveys will also be administered to the advisory board with which Meiju is a part of, and to our SKHHP planners in your jurisdictions. Answers will be anonymous to everyone except myself and Dorsal. And I'm going to use the answers to do a high-level review at our in-person September meeting, which will focus on this topic of what a sub-regional housing preservation strategy might look like. So the SKHHP planners have all been invited to that in-person meeting in September to help us learn a little bit more about the specific preservation issues going on in each of your communities. So I just sent that invite out to them on Wednesday. So if you're interested, feel free to connect with them. So I hope you're not sweating, worrying that you should have completed the survey because we are making time for it in this meeting. I know that I've received 2 responses already. So thank you very much. And for those that did complete it, I would just ask that you hang tight while we do that because we have some announcements to share at the end, and I don't want to lose quorum for this meeting. So Dorsal is going to help us with that link. Thank you. So it's there, and then I'm going to ask him to just remind us all how to disconnect, how to use this and not activate our personal Gmail accounts. There is a trick. So Dorsal, come on, tell us.
Thank you. In any of the browsers that you open, in the top right-hand corner, there should be 3 dots that make up a menu. If you click on that, you will see either an in private browser or an incognito browser. If you open up that browser and copy and paste the link in the chat, that will bypass your Google account. If you're comfortable with keyboard shortcuts, if you have your browser open and you hit Control, Shift, and the letter N, it will automatically open up a private browser for you as well.
So when folks feel like they have the survey in front of them and they're ready to go, can you give me a thumbs up? All right, I see 1, I see 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to give it 1 more minute before I start the official timer, but feel free to start the survey. I'll get the timer started. I'll share the screen on it so you know where we're at. But thank you all so much for taking the time to complete that. All right, few more seconds. I think most folks have completed it. So I would say if anyone needs more time, I think the vast majority are done. If folks need more time, if you could do that as soon as possible, that would be much appreciated. But I know that we are missing a few people here today, so we'll be reaching out to them to solicit their feedback on the surveys as well. So don't stress too much if you don't finish it today, but thank you for your efforts. Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, well, we are down to updates and announcements. Claire, I think you mentioned that there were some announcements to make, so please.
I have a handful. And I would welcome others to share announcements as well, but I wanted to remind the board that I am going on vacation. I will be out tomorrow through September 4th. And should you need anything urgently, please reach out to Dorsal Plants. And he will get you connected with whatever you need. Otherwise, I will see you all next month. And we will also be, myself and Mayor Backus are going to be presenting to the City of Maple Valley's Council on September 11th on the SKHHP Housing Capital Fund to present what the capital fund is and remind the council about uses of House Bill 1590 funds. And just have an open dialogue there. So looking forward to that. And then secondly, SKHHP has been invited to present at the City of SeaTax Planning and Economic Development Committee on September 21st for them to learn more about SKHHP and potentially consider membership. So looking forward to that conversation as well. Regarding the Housing Capital Fund, I wanted to just present briefly on the status of our pre-application meetings and how that's going. So building on the success of last year's funding round, we've seen an increased interest in the program. So this was one of our goals, was to get the word out, to let people know that this local funding source was here. And there's been particular interest given the additional new sources of revenue that we have. So we have currently held 6 pre-application meetings to date, with 2 more scheduled for next week. We've also met with 2 other affordable housing developers who are interested in applying next year. So the potential applications at this point that we know about, that we assume will be submitted, represent projects in Auburn, Burien, Des Moines, Kent, SeaTac, and unincorporated King County. So to remind the board that part of our funding sphere of influence isn't just the funding cities within SKHHP, that it really is an entire sub-regional area that we consider projects for, that we can use our funds for. So the deadline for applications is September 15th, and I'll be providing a more detailed update in terms of what applications we've received by that day, though it may not be totally accurate because they have until the end of the day and our meeting starts at 1. So our next meeting here with the board is in person at the City of Auburn Council Chambers, and we will be hearing from the King County Housing Authority is going to be joining us to talk about their work, and really looking forward to that conversation. And so thank you, Chair.
Well, we hope you have a wonderful vacation, Claire, very well deserved. And I hope that you enjoy every moment of it. Does anyone else have any items for the good of the order? Any announcements, any exciting things coming up that you'd like to share? Well, I hope you all enjoy a wonderful weekend. The weather should be a little bit more pleasant for everyone that doesn't enjoy baking. And just once again, I thank you for the work that you do, the care that you have for your communities. And we have so many great things ahead of us that I just really enjoy and look forward to these meetings where we can chat about more opportunities and ways that we can ensure our communities are safe and in healthy housing. So thank you all very much. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Okay, I'm gonna close it down.